Hi, welcome to Mini Movies. Today I'm going to explain an American science fiction thriller film called The Signal. Spoilers ahead, watch out and take care. A teenage boy, Nick, Haley, his girlfriend, and Jonah, their best friend, are driving to California. The boys are dropping off Haley, who's moving to California for school. While in the hotel, Nick hears his phone beeping. He looks at it and sees a message from Nomad, a hacker that's been taunting them. He wakes Jonah up, and they retreat to the bathroom and open their email. They begin sending messages to Nomad. Suddenly, Nomad sends an email, having video footage of their own hotel room. Nick looks behind himself to see where Haley is sleeping next to her laptop, and understands that Nomad has hacked her webcam. Nick closes it in anger, and begins an all-out search, tracing the IP address for Nomad. They finally locate him in Good Springs, Nevada, and congratulate each other. The following day at a gas station, Nick goes to get coffee. Haley asks Jonah if Nick has talked about her moving to California for a year. Jonah says they're both friends, and it isn't his place to comment on this. They see Nick come out with coffee, but he stumbles with his crutches and falls, spilling the coffee all over his shirt. Nick becomes angry and embarrassed as they come up to help him. Later, Nick and Jonah decide to go get Nomad since they're so close. Meanwhile, Nick notices Haley is missing, and Jonah tells him she's angry at him for not opening himself up to her. Nick finds her and they discuss their relationship and his unwillingness to talk about her moving. Nick attempts to think about it logically and doesn't want her to sacrifice her dreams for him because of his disability. Haley, however, sees his thinking as running away from his problems and her. Haley takes off a necklace he gave her and tries to give it back. When he refuses, she seemingly tosses it over a cliffside to his surprise. The three continue to drive towards Nomad's location. Nick is hesitant to bring Haley along, but she's angry at Nick and decides to go with them. Later, in complete darkness, they find the location of Nomad, apparently at an abandoned trailer. Haley stays in the car while Jonah and Nick investigate. They find random objects in the house, but no Nomad. Nick finds a basement and they go downstairs. While they don't find any computers, they find server racks, which gives credibility to the idea that Nomad had been at that location. Suddenly, they hear Haley screaming from outside. They rush back to the car and notice Haley missing. Nick and Jonah search with flashlights around until they see Haley in the distance being lifted into the sky. They run towards her, but random flashing lights from everywhere cut their pursuit. We then see Nick, who's been taken to a white room where he meets a man in a laboratory suit named Damon. Damon wants to know what happened to Nick, but Nick doesn't understand what he's talking about. Damon tells Nick that he and his friends have come in contact with an EBE, an extraterrestrial biological entity. After listening to Damon, Nick asks to see his friends, but Damon denies his request. As they talk, Damon notices blood dripping out of Nick's nose, and he's taken back to a sterile hospital room. The following day, as he wheels by rooms, he notices several of them being cleaned out or closed off completely. He looks into one room and sees Haley on a hospital bed. He tries to go back and see her, but is denied by his guard. Damon asks Nick some questions in a yes or no format. Nick doesn't understand why the test is needed and shows his displeasure. Damon brings in the television and plays Nick the tape of the shack footage that Jonah filmed. Damon zooms in and shows him an alien figure hiding between the branches. Nick is confused and doesn't know whether to believe what he's shown. Back in his room, Nick hears Jonah's voice coming from a vent. Jonah tells Nick something is very wrong with the people holding them and fears that he's been experimented on. During another test, Damon wants Nick to correspond certain tiles to shapes. Nick somehow completes the test in an aggressive manner. He then tells Damon that until he sees Haley, he won't say another word. Damon allows it, and Nick notices there's no update of treatment for her. Damon tells Nick that she's in a coma, and the second she wakes up, he'll be able to speak with her. Not willing to take Damon's word, Nick plans an escape. Cracking up breadcrumbs, Nick spreads them on a keypad so he can notice which keys are being pressed. Talking to Jonah, they figure out that the combination is 7521, but when Damon comes to Nick's room, he finds the drawings he made on the bed, outlining the entire facility. Later that day, Nick tries to escape with Haley on her hospital bed. Despite having some close calls, Nick makes it to the exit, but can't reach the keypad to open the door. He tries to use tubing to press the numbers, but by the time they get to press the last number, Damon catches them and takes them back. Later, Nick wakes up to Haley, who's finally woken. He says hello to her, and they reach for each other to hold hands. A man in a hazmat suit sees this and pushes them away. Nick yells at them and tries to reach for Haley again. Two men try to restrain them, but he struggles and falls off of his bed. Seeing black blood on their suits, the men panic and leave the room. Nick looks down and sees what freaked them out. His legs have been replaced with cybernetic legs of alien origin. He understandably freaks out and checks out what else they've done with his body. Damon, who's been watching behind a window, speaks to Nick and tells him this is why they kept him in the dark, to explain everything to him. Nick instead stands near the door and braces himself. He kicks the door down with his new legs and pushes Haley to the exit. At the elevator to the surface, Damon confronts Nick. He tells Nick that he's only safe down in the facility and he can't protect him outside. Nick pushes Damon back and gets to the elevator, closes it, and rides up with Haley. After coming out of the facility, Nick wakes Haley up and they begin to walk, looking for help. After walking for a while, out of nowhere, Nick and Haley see a car driving. The driver, Mirabelle, picks them up and drives them to the nearest gas station. Nick goes into the nearby bar looking for a phone. He finds one, but it doesn't work. He looks up to the television where the news has classified Haley and him as national threats that should be considered dangerous. Nick looks out where he left Haley and sees her enter a truck that's leaving. Nick races after the truck and tries to get it to stop, but the driver pushes them away. Then, getting in sync with his new legs, Nick begins to run very fast and catches up with the truck. The driver, James, looks to the passenger seat and sees Haley there pointing a gun at his head. He immediately stops the truck and the couple steal it and drive off. Meanwhile, Damon sets up a roadblock and pulls over Mirabelle, carrying a red briefcase. He then takes her to the facility and asks her about Nick and Haley, but Mirabelle seems more unstable than when we first encountered her. Damon opens up the red briefcase and takes a gun from it and kills her. After driving around, Nick finds a building and decides to stay there for the night. Meanwhile, Damon finds James and speaks to him. As the heat in the conversation rises, James tries to shoot Damon, but his shotgun doesn't fire when he pulls the trigger. Damon then takes his gun and shoots him in the chest, killing him. He then covers James's body with a blanket and pats his shoulder. Meanwhile, Nick and Haley are confronted by a man in a hazmat suit, but it isn't one of Damon's men. It's Jonah. He also escaped the facility just like them. Jonah believes they're in Area 51. He then shows Nick his arms, which have been replaced with cybernetic implants like Nick's legs. The next day, Nick and Jonah decide to drive through the checkpoint and get out of the area. As they reach the checkpoint, the guards use cinder blocks under the truck to stop them. Jonah fights some of the guards and runs into a building. Nick and Haley are crouching near the truck, unable to do anything. Jonah sees a laptop and grabs it while he's taking fire by the guards. He tries to override the gate controls, but has no luck. One man in a hazmat suit shoots a concussion grenade into the building, causing it to explode. Fatally wounded, Jonah goes to Nick and tells him to get the truck with Haley and tells them to drive when he gives the signal. Nick and Haley get into the truck, and Jonah uses his arms to smash the cinder blocks. Nick peels away, leaving Jonah behind. Crying and screaming, Jonah punches the ground. He does this several times, buying his friends time, knowing he'll eventually be killed. Nick and Haley escape, but in the distance, Damon has set up a roadblock. Unsure what to do, Nick continues to drive towards it, despite seeing all the guns pointed at them. Damon nods at two of his men to throw down a spike strip. Nick hits it, blowing the tires and causing the truck to flip. Haley whispers that she loves him and hands him something as hazmat men grab her and evacuate her to a waiting chopper. Nick looks at his hand and sees the necklace that he thought she threw away. Damon approaches Nick and notices a Damon sticker on his suit and realizes that Damon is Nomad backwards. Damon confirms this fact and indirectly reveals that they were the ones experimenting on Nick and his friends. Emotions course through his veins and he screams. His legs glow into a fiery red and cause the ground to crack. Nick begins to run fast, and Damon's men fire at him, but Nick is too fast and they couldn't catch him. He runs faster and faster until he crashes through a barrier like glass. Turning around, he sees that he's crashed through the desert zone. Everything he's been seeing is a simulation. Damon calmly walks up to the end of the simulation and removes his helmet. He shows Nick the back of his head, showing he's an alien hybrid. Nick then realizes all the government officials over there are aliens. Nick then looks out the window and sees that he's at an unknown space station about to dock with an unknown planet. His best friend is dead, and his girlfriend has been taken to be further experimented on, and he's alone on an alien planet with no clue on what to do next and no hope of getting home.